My name is Madison Reed. I'm 18 years old. 3 months ago, my stepfather slid a stack of legal documents across the kitchen table and told me to sign. He didn't ask. He didn't explain. He just said, calm and certain like it was already decided for me, "Your grandmother would have wanted this money to stay in the family." My dad stood behind him with his arms crossed, nodding like the decision had already been made long before I walked into the room. My mother didn't look at me directly. She looked at the counter instead, like eye contact might make it harder for me to obey. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask a question. I just pushed the papers back into the folder and said, "I'll think about it." That was the last calm moment in my life. The next morning, I left the house before sunrise and walked 2 miles to a small gray office building on Jefferson Street. Inside my backpack was a sealed envelope my grandmother had left for me, and I already knew something they didn't. Whatever they were trying to take from me, she had already prepared me for it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back. My grandmother died in March. Her name was Eleanor Hayes. To most people in our town in Ohio, she was just Mrs. Hayes from the bookstore on Maple. To me, she was the only person who ever made me feel like I didn't have to earn love. She owned a small used bookstore that always smelled like paper, dust, and lavender hand cream. Every Saturday, she let me rearrange the shelves however I wanted, even when customers complained. "Books find their own order," she used to say. "People just pretend they don't." She was sick for almost a year before she died, but she never told me how bad it really was. She just kept smiling like time was something she could bargain with. The last time I saw her alive, she was sitting in her armchair by the window, watching the snow fall like she was memorizing it. She held my hand and said, "Madison, don't let anyone confuse love with control." I didn't fully understand what she meant then. Now I do. After she passed, everything changed fast. Too fast. The house, the bookstore, her savings, everything went into a trust. And according to the paperwork, everything came to me. Not my mother, not my stepfather, not the man she married after my father disappeared from my life. Me. I was 17, and apparently that was a problem for everyone else. At first, they acted supportive. My stepfather, Daniel, even hugged me at the funeral. "You're going to be taken care of," he said quietly. "We'll make sure everything is handled responsibly." I remember thinking that word, responsibly, sounded less like care and more like a warning. My mother started calling it family money within a week. Not your inheritance. Not your grandmother's gift. Family money, like ownership could change just because you said it differently. Then came the conversations at dinner. At first, subtle. "College is expensive, Madison. We should think about long-term planning. Your grandmother wouldn't want you to make impulsive decisions." Then less subtle. "You're too young to manage something like this." And finally, the truth under all of it. "We need access to the funds." One night, Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table and tapped the folder with his finger. "You sign the authorization," he said, "and I can make sure it's invested properly." I looked at him. "And if I don't?" He smiled like I had asked something naive. "Then you're being difficult." That was the moment I realized this wasn't a conversation. It was a negotiation I was expected to lose. The pressure didn't stop there. It spread. My mother started mentioning how tight money was. Daniel started talking about repairs on the house. Bills I had never seen suddenly became urgent problems. And then they stopped asking. They started assuming. Like I had already agreed and just hadn't caught up yet. But what they didn't know was that 3 weeks after the funeral, I went to a lawyer my grandmother had quietly arranged for me years ago. A woman named Rebecca Lane. Her office was above a dry cleaner downtown. Small, quiet, the kind of place people only go when something serious has already happened. She didn't shake my hand when I walked in. She just said, "You're Eleanor's granddaughter." Not a question, a statement. Then she opened a drawer and took out a sealed envelope with my name written in my grandmother's handwriting. "I've been waiting to give you this," she said. Inside was a letter, and a copy of something I didn't fully understand at first. A trust agreement. Irrevocable. That word changed everything. Because it meant no one could alter it. Not my mother. Not Daniel. Not even a court. Rebecca watched my face as I read. "Your grandmother anticipated pressure," she said calmly. She anticipated exactly this. I looked up at her. She knew? Rebecca nodded once. She knew your family would try to control it before you were old enough to stop them. That night, I sat in my room reading the letter over and over. My grandmother's handwriting didn't feel like ink on paper. It felt like she was still speaking. If you are reading this, Madison, then someone has already tried to convince you that you owe them what is yours. You don't. I pressed the paper to my chest like it could steady my heartbeat. For the first time since she died, I didn't feel alone. I felt prepared. The next week was when things escalated. They filed paperwork, guardianship requests, financial oversight petitions. Daniel started meeting with people I didn't recognize. Lawyers, advisors, someone from a bank. And every time I asked what was happening, I got the same answer. We're protecting you. But protection doesn't feel like being cornered in your own kitchen. Protection doesn't feel like being told you're selfish for saying no. One evening, I came home and found my room slightly different. My drawers had been opened, my documents rearranged, my laptop moved. When I asked about it, my mother said we just wanted to make sure nothing important was misplaced. That was when I stopped trusting explanations. I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every request, every pressure tactic disguised as concern. Rebecca told me to stay quiet, to let them expose themselves, and they did. One Saturday morning, I found a printed email on the counter. It was from Daniel to a financial advisor. He had written, "We just need temporary access until Madison is more cooperative." Cooperative. Like I was a problem to be managed. I took a picture of it, sent it to Rebecca. Her response came within minutes. "Do not confront them. This is exactly what we need." I didn't understand what she meant until the meeting. It happened on a Tuesday. Rebecca called it a clarification session. My mother called it finally getting things sorted. Daniel called it a formality. None of them were right. The room was too clean, too quiet, too intentional. Rebecca sat at the head of the table with a folder thicker than anything I had ever seen in my life. My mother and Daniel sat across from her. I sat beside Rebecca, and for the first time I saw something unfamiliar in my mother's face. Confidence. Not in me. In control. Rebecca opened the file. "I want to make something very clear before we begin," she said. "This trust was established by Eleanor Hayes. It is irrevocable. Madison Reed is the sole beneficiary." Daniel leaned forward. "There are ways to challenge that." Rebecca didn't react. "There are not." Silence. Then she slid a document across the table. "This," she said, "is a record of attempted financial interference submitted by your advisor after receiving unauthorized instructions from Mr. Hayes." Daniel froze slightly. My mother turned to him. "You said that was handled," she whispered. Rebecca continued, calm as ever. "And this is a copy of the trust holder's final letter, which I will now read aloud." My hands went cold. Because I knew that letter. I had memorized it. But hearing it spoken out loud made it real in a different way. "If you are listening to this," Rebecca read, "then someone has tried to convince you that love requires you to surrender yourself. That is not love. That is control. Madison, if you are in this room, I need you to remember something very important. You do not belong to anyone." My mother shifted in her seat. Daniel stopped breathing. Rebecca kept reading. "I have built this trust not to give you money, but to give you distance from people who mistake your kindness for weakness." The air in the room felt heavier with every word. Then came the final line. "If they are asking you to choose between family and yourself, choose yourself. Every time." When she finished, nobody spoke. Not immediately. Then my mother laughed. A short, sharp sound that didn't match her face. "This is insane," she said. "She's been gone for months, and she's still controlling everything." Rebecca looked at her. "No," she said quietly. "She prepared for everything." Daniel stood up first. "We're done here." But Rebecca didn't move. "We're not." And for the first time, I understood what my grandmother had done. She didn't leave me money. She left me boundaries that couldn't be crossed. Outside, in the parking lot, my mother didn't speak to me. Daniel didn't look at me. They left like people walking away from something they couldn't solve. I stayed in the car for a long time after. Not because I was sad, because for the first time I didn't have to decide whether to obey or resist. The decision had already been made for me, by someone who loved me enough to think beyond her own lifetime. That night, I went home and packed a small bag. Not because I was leaving, but because I finally understood I wouldn't have to run to protect what was mine. The system already knew, and it wasn't on their side. The next morning, I woke up to silence so heavy it felt intentional. No footsteps in the hallway, no cabinet doors closing too hard, no whispered conversations that stopped the moment I entered a room. For a second, I thought maybe everything had ended overnight. But then I saw the envelope on my desk, white, unmarked, except for one line written in my mother's handwriting. "Don't sign anything today." My stomach tightened immediately, because I hadn't told anyone I was being asked to sign again. At breakfast, my mother was already dressed. Daniel was at the counter scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened the night before. No one mentioned Rebecca. No one mentioned the trust. That was new. Before, they pushed. Now, they were waiting. My mother finally spoke first. "We've decided to slow things down," she said carefully. Daniel didn't look up. "It's just too complicated right now." I stirred my coffee even though I wasn't drinking it. "What exactly is complicated?" My mother smiled. Not warmly. Practiced. "You're still grieving. These decisions shouldn't be rushed." That word again. Decisions. Like I was the one changing the rules. Like I hadn't already said no. I left for school early, but I didn't go to class. Instead, I went straight to Rebecca Lane's office, above the dry cleaner. Same stairs, same quiet hallway. But this time the door was already open. Rebecca looked up as I walked in. "I was expecting you," she said. That made my skin go cold. She closed a file folder and turned it toward me. Inside were printed emails, bank notifications, and something I didn't recognize at first. A second legal petition. Filed yesterday. "This is new," she said. I scanned the page. My mother and Daniel were trying something different now. Not control through trust. Control through custody. They're attempting to establish temporary guardianship based on emotional dependency and financial incapacity, Rebecca said. I blinked. "That's not true." "I know," she replied. "But they're not trying to be accurate. They're trying to be persuasive." That distinction made my stomach drop. "What happens if they succeed?" I asked. Rebecca didn't answer immediately. That pause told me. Finally, she said, "They would gain partial authority over your financial decisions until the court reviews the trust structure. And during that time, they would try to access it, not might. Try. Like it was already the plan." I sat down. For the first time since this started, my hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, from realization. "They're not stopping," I said. Rebecca shook her head once. "No." Then she added something I wasn't ready for. "And they've escalated faster than your grandmother predicted." That made me look up. She predicted this? Rebecca opened another folder. Inside was a handwritten note. Same handwriting, same neat controlled letters. But this one was different. Shorter, colder. "If they escalate to court, they will panic. When they panic, they make mistakes. Let them." My grandmother had planned for panic, for escalation, for loss of control. She hadn't just prepared a trust. She had prepared a sequence. That afternoon, I went home earlier than usual. The house felt different the moment I stepped inside. Too quiet again, but not peaceful. Strategic. My mother was in the living room. Daniel was sitting across from her, and between them on the coffee table was a stack of printed documents. New ones. I recognized Rebecca's name on one of them. They had found her, or tried to. My mother stood when she saw me. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't sit. "I already talked to Rebecca." That changed the room instantly. Daniel closed his laptop slowly. My mother's expression tightened. "Madison," she said, softer now, "this is getting out of control." "No," I said. "It's getting documented." Silence. Then Daniel leaned forward. "You're being influenced." I almost laughed. "By my grandmother?" My mother stepped closer. "She's manipulating you from beyond the grave." That sentence landed heavier than anything before it. Not because it was shocking, because it was wrong. And desperate. I looked at both of them. Really looked. Not as family. As people trying to rewrite reality until it fit their version of control. "You're the ones filing petitions," I said. "You're the ones contacting banks. You're the ones trying to change legal authority over something you don't own." My mother's voice cracked slightly. "We're trying to protect you." That phrase again. Always protection. Always justification. Always control dressed as care. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the sequence Rebecca mentioned. Let them escalate. Let them panic. Let them make mistakes. But what mistake? And how far would they go before they realized they were already losing? At 2:13 a.m. I heard movement in the hallway. Soft. Intentional. Not random. I opened my door slightly. Daniel was standing near the kitchen counter. On the table in front of him was my laptop. Open. My chest tightened immediately. I stepped closer quietly. He didn't see me at first. He was reading something on the screen. Emails. My emails. Rebecca's name was visible. Then my mother appeared behind him, and for the first time I saw something shift in her face that I had never seen before. Fear. Not of me. Of exposure. You shouldn't be doing that, I said from the hallway. Both of them turned. Daniel straightened quickly. We were just making sure. Making sure what? I interrupted. That I don't have private conversations with my legal representative? My mother stepped forward. You're still a minor in this house. That sentence was supposed to reset the hierarchy. It didn't. Instead, something inside me settled, like a line finally becoming visible. I'm not a minor in the trust, I said. I'm not a minor in the legal structure your mother created. I'm only a minor in this house. A pause. Then I added, and that won't last much longer. The next morning I went back to Rebecca. I didn't even sit down. I want to know everything, I said. She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded and opened a file I hadn't seen before. This is what your grandmother anticipated last, she said. Inside were instructions. Not financial. Not legal paperwork. Something else. A timeline. A trigger clause. And one sentence highlighted in yellow. If they attempt to gain legal guardianship, release secondary protections. I looked at her. What does that mean? Rebecca closed the folder. It means, she said carefully, your grandmother didn't just protect your inheritance. She protected you from the people trying to control it. I felt my breathing change. Secondary protections? I repeated. Rebecca nodded once. Yes. And once activated? She looked at me directly. Everything changes. That was the moment I realized something I hadn't understood before. This wasn't a fight over money. It never had been. It was a test. And that my grandmother wasn't just watching from the past, she had already set the outcome in motion. The court hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. I didn't sleep the night before. Not because I was scared of losing, but because I finally understood this wasn't something that could be won in a single moment. It was a system, and systems don't break easily. They collapse slowly, in layers. My mother showed up in a navy suit she had never worn before. Daniel looked like he hadn't slept either. They didn't look at me when we entered the courthouse. That was new too. Before, they always looked at me like I was something unfinished. Now I think they weren't sure what I had become. Rebecca was already inside. Calm, unmoving, like she had already seen this exact room play out in her head. The judge entered. The case was called, and my mother spoke first. She painted a picture of instability, of emotional vulnerability, of a teenager unable to properly manage significant financial responsibility. Daniel supported every sentence like he had rehearsed them. They didn't lie directly. They shaped truth until it bent in their favor. Then it was Rebecca's turn. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue emotionally. She simply placed the trust document on the desk and said, "This was created 3 years before this hearing. Every clause anticipates exactly what is being claimed today." The judge looked down, then up. "Are you saying this trust anticipates guardianship disputes?" Rebecca nodded. "Yes, and neutralizes them." That word changed the room. Neutralizes, not reacts to, not defends against. Neutralizes. My mother shifted in her seat for the first time. Daniel stopped breathing. Then Rebecca said something I didn't expect. "There is also a secondary directive attached to this trust." The judge frowned slightly. "I was not provided with that." Rebecca nodded. "That is because it activates only under specific legal conditions. Those conditions have now been met." My mother leaned forward. "What conditions?" Rebecca turned a page. "Attempted legal guardianship to access restricted financial assets belonging to the beneficiary." Silence. Then she looked at me. And for the first time I felt something I didn't understand yet. Not fear. Not relief. Finality. The judge paused. "Explain secondary directive." Rebecca answered simply. "It transfers full legal control of trust oversight to an independent federal fiduciary board." My mother blinked. Daniel frowned. "I don't understand," he said. Rebecca did not look at him. That means, she said, no family member, guardian, or affiliated party will ever have access or influence over the trust again. The judge leaned back. And the beneficiary? She receives structured distributions only. Protected. Permanent. Uncontested. That was the moment I saw it. My mother's face changed. Not anger, not frustration. Loss. Because she realized she had been completely removed from the equation. Not by me, by someone she underestimated her entire life. The judge made the ruling within minutes. Petition denied. Filing flagged. Trust protections upheld in full. Case closed. But the real ending wasn't in the courtroom. It was outside, on the courthouse steps. My mother stood there first, Daniel beside her. Neither spoke at first. Then my mother finally said, "You knew this would happen." I looked at her. "No," I said. "I didn't." That was the truth. I hadn't known, but someone else had. She nodded slightly, like she accepted that but couldn't process it. Then she said something quieter. "Was any of it ever going to be ours?" I paused, and for the first time I didn't feel anger toward her, just distance. "No," I said, "it was never meant to be touched." Daniel didn't say anything. For the first time, he didn't try to explain, justify, or reframe. He just looked tired, like someone who finally realized the door had never been unlocked. Only watched. Weeks passed, then months. Life didn't explode. It settled. Strangely. My mother stopped talking about money completely. Daniel moved into a smaller apartment. They didn't fight me anymore because there was nothing left to fight over. Or rather, nothing they could reach. I turned 18 quietly. No celebration from them. No confrontation either. Just distance. Control replaced by silence. Rebecca transferred the first distribution exactly as outlined. I used part of it for college. The rest stayed untouched. Not because I was unsure, because I finally understood something my grandmother had built into every decision. Wealth without vulnerability is just structure, and structure only matters when people try to break it. One evening, I received a final envelope. No return address. Inside was one handwritten page. From Rebecca. Not legal, not formal. Just a note. Your grandmother didn't want to win against your family. She wanted to make sure you never had to fight them in the first place. I folded it and placed it in a small box with everything else she left me. Then I looked at the bracelet she'd given me years ago. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was surviving anything. I felt like I had already passed through it. My name is Madison Reed. I'm 18 now. I didn't lose my family, I just learned where their control ended and where my life began. And I stopped crossing that line for them. Forever.